Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, good. We're going to call to order the public hearing on the raising of Beach Street. It's 6:01 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So I have agendas. I don't know if everyone got it, but I'm going to have the engineers go first and explain what they state what they have to say, and then we will go to the audience. There will be a one-time 3-minute speaking rule for each person that gets up, and we'll go from there. So I don't know which, Brian, do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name's Brian Skanesny. I'm a project engineer with Diversified Technology Corporation. We've been under contract with the city to design the reconstruction of B Street and raise it. Phase 1 from Monahan Place to just north of 2nd Avenue has been completed. And this hearing, our meeting, is addressing Phase 2, which is picking up where Phase 1 ended and continuing down to Moore Street. The whole street was raised to maintain access, basically to maintain access to the treatment plant during the 100-year storm, and that is raising the street to elevation 11. So Phase 1, which you've all seen, is at elevation 11. Phase 2, the design plans that you've seen, some of you have seen, I assume most of you have seen them. What's shown on the screen there is a continuation of that and raising the second half of the road to elevation 11 as well. With that, we could turn it over to John from UConn, who's done some modeling of the flooding for various events.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is John Tracinsky. I am the Director of Resilience Planning at an organization called CIRCA, which stands for the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation. So we're at UConn. We're a part of the School of Marine Sciences. And basically what we do is we do research to kind of see what climate change is going to do to the coastline and how it might impact our state. We've been assisting a lot of different towns, trying to help work through some of these decisions about elevating roads and infrastructure. And through that process, we got involved in helping Abdul and the city to kind of figure out what can we do about the water pollution control facility, and how do you incorporate sea level rise into the protection for that facility. So through that process, Abdul asked us to take a look and do kind of like some flood modeling of different elevations of Beach Street and First Avenue to see, if you pick one particular elevation, how does that impact the flood extent in the neighborhood and along the road. So we're kind of coming into this pretty late. I know you guys have been, having conversations about this for years. I'm just going to present kind of our initial modeling of flooding in the area and what we recommend for how to incorporate sea level rise into, planning for the road. So, with that said, I just want to make a few key points up front to kind of help frame this discussion from the circus perspective. The first, my presentation is over there on the side. So the first thing is kind of thinking about the risk tolerance for the road in the community, right? So there's a couple of different things that you can think about. One would be, do we want to preserve dry egress along Beach Street and First Avenue for the absolute worst case we can think of into the future, right? So that would be kind of like a category 3 hurricane, something we probably have never seen directly in this area. But you can think about that. Hey, it's too important. We want to preserve access along the road for the worst case scenario. So that would be one level of elevation that you would want to think about. Or do we want to look back and say, for instance, Superstorm Sandy? If we had another Superstorm Sandy, we want to preserve access along the road for that type of event. Which is more typical of what we've seen in Connecticut over the past 100 years, and closer to kind of the estimate of the 100-year storm. So that's the first point. The second point is, how far into the future do you want to think about this, right? How long does this access along the road and the protection for the neighborhood, how long do you want it to last? Do you want to think about the next 30 years, the next 50 years? Do you want to think about to 2100? Are we going to have to do this again in another couple of decades? Do we want to think bigger and longer term? So these are questions that I can't answer. This is about the community sort of having conversations about those things and making decisions. And then the third and the fourth thing is that these modeling, these flood model results that we've done in the last couple of weeks they're very preliminary. They're appropriate for talking about the concept of different elevations of road, but when you get to the level of engineering, there's a few things you would want to look at. One of which is how the water is moving in and out of the culverts that go under the road. Another of which would be looking at the wave impacts on flooding in the area. So those are my caveats. And I'll start by saying, I think Abdul reached out to us to figure out, how do we incorporate sea level rise into this project? So this graphic is something that Circa did in 2018 and reflects, work that we've done to estimate what the likely range of sea level rise is over the next 30 years. And so these are different. There's a bunch of different assumptions that are built into each of these lines, some of which are, for instance, how fast would global ice sheets melt if we don't curb emissions, right? So that would be one set of assumptions. Another set of assumptions would be how quickly are we able to draw down global carbon emissions and stabilize things. But the interesting thing is that by 2030, the different scenarios don't really change that much, or 2050 rather, I'm sorry. So by 2050, even if you take those different assumptions, we basically have a certain amount of sea level rise that's built into everything that's happened over the last 150 years or so. And so as a result, we recommend that towns prepare for 20 inches of sea level rise by 2050. So that's 20 inches above the what they call the national tidal datum. So this would be NAVD 88. So that is the upper bound of the likely range of what we expect in terms of sea level rise. Now beyond 2050, you can see that the lines diverge quite a bit, and that's because how much sea level rises by 2100 is going to be sensitive to what happens with global emissions and several of these other things. So that's where there's more uncertainty and it's harder to make a recommendation.
Excuse me, could we possibly move this sign over to the side? We can't even see you folks over there. Right there. Thank you.
Yeah, is it hard to hear? Okay. I don't know if we can activate these mics somehow.
There's a handheld one.
I think this is just for the recording.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's just for the recording.
all right, I'll try to project as best I can.
I know the lights are over there.
Okay, so this image here is just kind of showing, basically what we're doing at Circa is we're creating like a computer simulation of different types of floods that happened before. So it's a fancy way of saying that we take Superstorm Sandy, right, and we take the watermarks, how high the water went during that particular storm, and then we compare that to our computer simulation of that type of a flood. And that allows us to kind of do things like add sea level rise or make modifications to the flood, like raising the road, for instance, and see what the results would be. And so, you know, I don't need to go too much into that unless you want to nerd out on computer models, but you know, basically there's 4 scenarios that Abdul asked us to look at and model, you know, what the flooding would look like. So there's case 0. This is basically the existing condition along the road. You've already done some elevating of First Avenue up to a certain point. So that is represented with case 0. Case number 1 is if you were to elevate the stretch south along Beach Street to 9 feet, so elevation 9 feet. Case 2 would be the extending the full profile of what you've already started with the elevation, so that there's varying profiles in what I was given. It's 11 to 12 feet along Beach Street. And then case 3 is where we looked at what is the minimum uniform elevation that would preserve dry egress along Beach Street and First Avenue. Okay, so this is the existing condition, the existing profile of First Avenue and Beach Street. It's a little difficult to see it, but essentially the section of Beach Street where you've not elevated the road, if we were to recreate a Superstorm Sandy type of a flood and add the 20 inches of sea level rise, you have anywhere from 3 to 3.5 feet of water on the road for that type of a scenario. And interestingly, there's a stretch to the north of Monahan Place where there's an additional low elevation, a low stretch of road that actually water is coming over that road in our simulation, right? And so that controls some of the water that gets into the neighborhood around Oldfield Creek. So, and that'll come into play when I show some of the other simulations, because we tried to run these model scenarios with, you know, elevating Beach Street just alone, and then we also do the little stretch above Monahan Place to see how that would impact both of them. So, okay, so this is kind of the picture of, you know, where the neighborhood floods, how deep the water gets in different spots along the neighborhood. Again, you know, if we're concerned mainly with the road in this discussion tonight, you know, the existing condition is about 2.5 to 3 feet of water along Beach Street, and then there's about 2.5 feet to 3 feet of water in that little stretch just north of Monahan. And this is to highlight the stretch that I'm discussing because it has sort of an outsized effect on how water moves in and out of that area around Oldfield Creek. Okay, so this is the scenario where you raise Beach Street to elevation 9. And the main thing I would say is that it doesn't change the extent of flooding in the neighborhood all that much. But it does lower the depth of flooding along Beach Street to about 1 foot. So if you elevate it to elevation 9, you could, you know, you would lower the depth of flooding along that stretch of road to about 1 foot. But if you don't deal with that section north of Monahan Place, you'd still have 2 to 3 feet of flooding along that stretch. So if that particular intersection is a concern for access, then you would want to do both of those things. Okay, so this is scenario 2. And so in this case, you basically take the profile of First Avenue that you've already elevated and extend it south along Beach Street. So, and there's varying elevations along the profile, 11 to 12 feet. And so in that case, you, for the most part, you've removed the depth of flooding along the road for, as I said, this is kind of a Hurricane Sandy type of a scenario, plus 20 inches of sea level rise. And if you also elevate that stretch north of Monahan, then you actually reduce the flooding in the neighborhood by, you reduce almost all of the flooding in the neighborhood. Right, so if you basically elevate the road north of Monahan and south to Beach Street, you could reduce all of the flooding in the neighborhood and preserve dry access on the road. And then the final scenario that we were asked to provide was sort of the minimum elevation of the road that would prevent flooding along the road. It turns out to be, in our model simulation, it's about 11 feet, right? So if you have an elevation of 11 feet along that stretch of road, then you're pretty much protected from most of the storms that we've experienced in the past 100 years, plus our best estimate of sea level rise. So that's pretty much what we've done so far. As I said, if you make a decision to pick one elevation or another, you would want to have a team, an engineer, to take a look at the culverts and some of the restrictions of the flow of water in the neighborhood to ground truth some of this. But this is the modeling that CERC has provided, and I hope it's helpful for the discussions. We're just here to provide information to the best that we can, and help you guys make decisions. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wait,
I'm
I'm gonna let
sorry.
everybody, that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
We're gonna follow the agenda, so we will have time for questions. Everybody stay. Abdul, I don't know if you wanna go next, or? Okay.
Sure. So my name is Azure D. Slater. I'm with Race Coastal Engineering. We are a waterfront consulting firm
Can you speak up, please?
was hired by DTC as a sub-consultant to look at raising the road at various elevations and the flooding impact. And I think John just kind of almost reiterated all of our findings that we had come up with for looking at elevations between existing at elevation 7 to 9.5 and ultimately at 11, and developed looking at not necessarily Sandy, but what FEMA prescribes as the 100-year storm, what the FEMA firm maps are based on, and essentially came up with similar numbers as far as the level of expected inundation of the road and the level of wave impact on infrastructure behind the road once it's raised at various elevations. And so, again, our information came first, but I think we concur, and our results jive as far as having the road at elevation 11, reducing the depth of standing water and the probability of inundation, and also again the wave impacts. And I guess that was one question I had for you, is whether or not you're looking at standing water or waves as well.
Yeah, no, that we don't have wave impacts in this model yet, so that's why I caveated my results with that would be further needed to, we need to study that further, so.
So one of the elements that Race looked at was the impact of raising the road on wave reduction on infrastructure landward of the road. And so, FEMA has determined that waves in excess of 1.5 feet can cause structural damage of houses and buildings. And so, going to elevation 11 on the road reduces those wave heights to less than a foot, and so could help save some of the infrastructure as well, in addition to allowing egress on the road. That's really all I have.
What's that? Doug, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or any comments you have. Doug works for the city of West Haven, and you can give your official title, one of many.
Good evening. I'm the floodplain manager for the city of West Haven. And I'm the fellow you come to see when you want to build something in a flood zone and figure out where you have to be for regulation purposes, and also so you can get the best rate for your flood insurance policy. The higher you are, the cheaper you are. As you've read, I'm sure recently, FEMA is taking away all discounts for flood insurance. So if you have a flood policy, you're going to see a substantial increase in your premiums. Those premiums serve to affect our grand list as far as the community goes. The cost of insurance reduces the ability to qualify for a mortgage, which affects the purchase price and the value of the house in the floodplain directly. You could have a house identical to yours a block away. It's not in the flood zone, that's worth $20,000 to $30,000 more than your house would be in the flood zone. So we coach and urge everyone to elevate, elevate, elevate. And if you can't elevate, protect. And that's what raising the road would do, is protect a lot of you. Now, none of the homes behind this road can withstand waves. None. If you get hit with a wave, you're done. Even if you have flood insurance, it's only 60 cents on the dollar. You won't be made whole. You'll barely get back to your initial structure. So if they're offering an opportunity to put a barrier between you and that wave, I could take it. I'd say that would affect our next flood insurance map that comes out in a positive way for all of you that might be subject to this. If you look at our current flood map now, you can bet that flood zone is going to expand in the next map when they add 20 inches of sea level rise to that. So I would encourage you to go with the highest possible elevation. If it were me, I'd go to the 500 flood year and put the road elevation 15. You might tar and feather me and run me out of the room with that suggestion. But that's where I would be if I had my choice, with 15. So 11 is a compromise already from where we should, from my opinion.
Thank you, Doug. And then Abdul, do you want to, show the,
You want to? So we've prepared some photo simulations for you so that kind of so you can get an idea where the road would be and in relation to the existing ground. Primarily we focused on the area around 2nd Avenue and the parking lot to the bird sanctuary. And this is our first slide here, and you can see this is right opposite. Oh, I don't have you. No, you can't see. It was up before.
shut off, did it? Because I'm sitting under it, isn't
No.
it?
Put it in this computer.
Can't put it on that one.
Just put it on. Because this one, you're right, it doesn't look like it's on anymore.
There's a little green light, that's it.
Plug in again or something.
It was on before. Let's do this. That's what I'm. Just switching to that one.
Yeah, because that one worked good.
Switch to that one.
Just hang it out.
See if that works. There we go. Much
There
better.
we go.
Much better.
Do you think we should shut the lights off for this
Yeah.
one? Could someone just shut the light? Where are the lights in the back?
Doug's got it.
Thanks. This is, I think,
It's easier
looks
to see.
better in the dark.
It's getting better.
Doug. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, so again, we tried to come up with some photo simulations of what the proposed road would look like in relation to the existing ground, and we concentrated on the area around Second Avenue and the area of the parking lot to the bird sanctuary, because that seemed to be an area of concern from some of the previous meetings we've had. This first slide here is you're looking at the parking lot. And we're like standing just near Second Avenue, and you can see that's the crosswalk that's proposed, and in the background you can see the parking lot. And what we're doing now, these are based on our current design, which is elevation 11, and you can see we from this photo. We are planning on raising that parking lot, so there is no grade differential between the roadway, the bikeway, and the parking lot itself. Again, here's just another view of the same thing. Again, just as is now looking, you can see Second Avenue on your left, looking up First Avenue. Again, as you can see, it's not as bad as it sounds, that raising the road to 11. The road is,
We're not seeing all of it. There seems to be a question here as to what you're talking about. You're talking 11 feet, is it 11 feet above sea level?
elevation 11, yes.
So what is the difference between the existing road and the new road at this point?
Well, it varies along the road, but
I know it varies, but approximately.
in this particular area, it's like 3 feet.
Okay, if we
When
can,
you say 11 feet, excuse me, I'm a builder. The top of that screen is approximately 11 feet. So you're saying where we are now presently, it's going to be raised to that height from where we are? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that.
no.
I'm saying elevation
I
11.
hear 11, and I know that's about 11.
No, that's 11 from the floor, but your floor is at 4 or 5 feet, let's say that. And now it's elevation, it's not a height.
Okay, I would really appreciate if everyone doesn't scream from their seat. There's a sign-up sheet to speak. I'd like to let everybody do their presentations, and then I know some people already signed up, and they're gonna be able to get up and speak and ask, the question or whatever. Maybe they don't have a question, maybe they just have a comment or a decision on it. So rather than everybody just yelling out, let's finish the presentation, and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. Brian, you can go ahead.
So again, here's another view. This is more sitting on Second Avenue, looking towards the parking lot. Now here we are actually on Beach Street, looking north towards Second Avenue on the left, First Avenue on your right, and again the parking lot on the right. And you can see the road, the bikeway, all about the same elevation. Now this is moving up First Avenue, more or less where it ties into what's been built already. So we're beyond the parking lot, and you have a little bit of an embankment there because we're trying not to impact the wetlands. Again, more views of the same thing. Again, this is the park, the park, I don't know if that park has a name or not, but the park is on your left, and this is just the shorefront on the right, and this is, again, along First Avenue, just a little bit around the area where Phase 1 ended. Here, this is on Second Avenue, looking towards Beach Street, First Avenue, with the park being on your left, and you can see we've basically filled in the park slightly so that you don't see any embankment or anything. You have a nice, fairly level park area. Again, this is looking up First Avenue. Again, this is more of an aerial view. Park on the left, Second Avenue way on the left, the park in the middle, and you can see a little bit of an embankment on the right-hand side. Again, here's another view looking from Second Avenue to the parking lot. And again, these are based on a roadway elevation of 11. And that's all we have. Further down Beach Street, there isn't, there aren't the impacts because there's basically nothing there at the moment, so we concentrated our photo sims on this area. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
I only have one question for you, Brian, and my question is, so we're WPCA, where the phase 1 was done, if you will, the raising of the road, that was 11 feet also?
That area is 11,
Okay,
yes.
so that is 11, so this is gonna be no different as far, because this is not my expertise at all.
No, it's the same. It's a
going-
continuation of the same.
So it's gonna be the same, so it's not
Yes.
gonna be a mountain or anything at all like that was envisioned, or it's gonna like flow nicely like WPCA does?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. Abdul, is there anything you would like to add?
No, ma'am. The only thing I can say is that we had a meeting before on this one. We had embankment, that you had about 3-4 feet of embankment when you look from Second Avenue. Now we have modified those plans. We graded it such that there will be no embankment. It's almost level. Up to the parking lot, Third Avenue, we have moved the entrance to the parking area from Second to Third Avenue where it exists today. So those are the modifications. There was a question of crosswalks and pedestrian walking to the beach. Now it's almost level. It's handicap accessible, so there will be no issue with it. All those questions that were raised, we have addressed those. There are some other questions that the different treatment of the sidewalk crossing, we will take that into consideration in the final design. We have not finalized the plan. The plans are still old ones. But once we decide the elevation, then we will finalize the plan and we'll complete the 90% completion, and then we're going to have another public meeting at the planning and zoning session. So you will have another input at that point.
All set, Abdul?
Yes.
Can somebody put the lights back on, because I don't. As far as thank you, Doug. So, as I said, right up here, there is a pad where people had signed in, so I don't know who number 1 is. I can take the first sheet, and then people can sign up that didn't sign up that may want to possibly speak. So. Are you number 1?
I am, Mayor, yes.
You're number 1, right?
Number 1 in the heart.
just take this top one, and then if other people want to just continue to sign in, they can, and I will call. Oh, okay, thank you, I just wanted to make sure. There's nothing there. Okay. So the first speaker is Nick Ruckholt.
Thank you, Mayor. Are these not on? Are they on? Okay. Well, first, I think a lot of the information that was given tonight has alleviated a lot of my questions and comments. I know there's a 3-minute speaking rule, and I will try to be brief. I am here tonight to speak in favor of the new road at Beach Street. I support the road being raised at an elevation of 11 feet, which would take the road out of the flood zone and make Beach Street a vibrant right-of-way with walking paths, bike paths, and to preserve access to homes and businesses. I am a lifelong resident of West Haven. I actually lived on the corner of Peck Avenue and Beach Street for 5 years. During this time, I served on the West Haven City Council. I was a fire commissioner and served other capacities here in the city. I followed this project very closely, and I'm here supporting my lifelong friends who recently bought Chick's, the former Chick's restaurant. It's a humongous win for West Haven that the state, through State Representative Boer, has secured this $6 million to raise and rehab Beach Street. There's been many communication with the community every step of the way, and this would not be possible without her hard work, and I think West Haven needs to take advantage of it. As we're here tonight with Mayor Rossi and the administration has done everything, in my opinion, they could to hear all of our concerns. They've come back and implemented new drawings. We've had many email change myself, my friends who are the now owners of Chick's, and many of the residents down along Beach Street. The information that we've gotten by this administration provided to the public at this particular phase in this project, I think, is unprecedented. I want to thank the mayor, Abdul, and everybody here tonight for all your hard work and the communication. I've been a part of many projects in this town in my limited capacity in town government, including the new high school, David Beckerman's project, the Haven, and many other small and big projects alike. Unfortunately, we have to have a lot of faith in planning and zoning, our town engineers, the administration, and our highest elected official to carry out these functions. Whatever the conclusion tonight and where this goes, hopefully at 11 feet, there will be subsequent meetings at Planning and Zoning where most of our questions and other concerns can be addressed. And I will be there every step of the way. I want to be clear that raising the road is not a perfect situation for anybody, including the new owners of Chick's. But doing nothing or not raising this road to the base flood elevation is just not acceptable. There will be a construction zone for the duration of the project. It can hurt their view. There are going to be many changes and hiccups along the way, but I, the community, and these gentlemen realize the long-term positive effects that raising this road will have, and ultimately, it's the right thing to do. It will be the only way that they can have a viable business, control the flooding, alleviate the flood risk the best they can, control their cost, and hopefully that this will be a catalyst to revitalizing Beach Street in a way to a better West Haven. We're all aware of what occurred during Irene and Sandy, and I'm not going to go through that. Two quick last points. One thing is loss of use. When the road gets flooded and there's a flood, the owners, homeowners, businesses have no recourse to get loss of use. There is no backstop to put you in a hotel. There's nobody there with a pot of money to provide you all the lost revenue when your doors are closed. Raising this road is critical to having any sort of business development on Beach Street and to help many, many homeowners as tides begin to rise to not deal with that dire situation that their home is flooded and they have nowhere to go. Lastly, I just want to again thank everybody for the time here tonight. I had some other comments and questions. I think these drawings have really summed up everything in my opinion. I think Doug brought a lot of light to the residential flooding situation. Flood premiums for people in these areas are going to be really ugly these next couple years. Everyone in political office, state and federal elected officials, phones are going to be ringing off the hook. We cannot stop the flooding, but this will sure help. So thank you, Mayor, again for all your hard work, and thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Bob Marr.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Robert Marr. I live at 109 Anderson Avenue, which is 3 blocks from the Shoreline at the corner of Anderson and Noble. Well, I'm going to start off by saying I'm a scientist, by the way. I have a PhD in plant pathology, and I've been following the shoreline issues, following the issues with climate change, following what the likeliest outcomes are of sea level rise, as expressed by our gentleman from Circa. One thing that we didn't see on that map, by the way, was where will the high tide line be as sea level rises? As Connecticut state geologists expressed in a very obvious statement, but one which seems to be repeated again, that is that as sea level rises, the shoreline encroaches landward. And so when we have 20 inches of sea level rise, where will the shoreline be at that point? It's certainly going to be further inland than it is now. And unless we keep bringing in tens of thousands of tons of sand to create beaches where none was ever meant to be in the first place, which is the reality from Guilford to Milford, that is the geological record, we are not going to have a beach there anyway. We don't have one now. So, and also, as you raise this road and you put in 30-degree embankments, I work in the forest mostly, and I work on some 30-degree slopes. It's very hard to negotiate a 30-degree slope. So I realize you want to put in stairs or some kind of handicap access, but as you raise the road, the footprint of that road with those embankments gets wider and wider. So we would like to actually see pictures of where you said nothing is there at the area around Morse Park. We saw a lot of pictures of 2nd Avenue and a crosswalk with bicycles or without, or with a bird watcher or without, but I saw no pictures of what's going to happen at that area across from the skate park where there is no room from the road right now. So where is that road's embankment going to end up? What's the footprint going to be of that road? So if the purpose is to create an evacuation route, by the way, I want to know why we would not be focusing on roads that are perpendicular to the shoreline rather than parallel to the shoreline. I would like to know how this continued hardening of infrastructure based on a fantasy that we're going to continue to have a usable shoreline there when actually the shoreline is going to encroach landward unless there's something about gravity and reality that I'm not getting. How is this hardening of infrastructure consistent with the NRCS buyout to create and restore a floodplain? Because I haven't heard anything about that. On the one hand, we were doing a buyout to create more floodplain, to absorb more of the sea level rise, and now we're creating a levee, which is essentially what this road is going to be from the landward side, that's going to hold, if some of this water coming in is going to be from intense rains, and we got a taste from Houston, from the south, from Ida, on what these storms might look like. 20 inches of rain in less than 24 hours, for example. And if we have that kind of rain coming in and a storm surge, I think that the dynamics are going to be a lot different than just some wave action coming from a storm surge from the ocean. But we don't really know that, and I think our imaginations are not really capable of grasping what is going to happen with climate change and with the inevitability, given that we are not doing as a town, as a state, as a country, as a world, what's necessary to curb the worst case scenario of what climate change is promising to bring us. So I mentioned about the embankments, the 30 degrees of slope. I would like to know if the road is including a dedicated bike and footpath that would be consistent with East Coast Greenway guidelines. And also, what kind of traffic calming measures is there room for on this road, given that you're going to have to make the road smaller and smaller to accommodate an increasing footprint with these embankments? So, in any case, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm obviously not a great fan of this idea. I really would like to see your drawings for the area further west, and what that area is going to look like, what you envision for that continually eroding beach across from the skate park. I just want to point out to people and remind everybody that in 2016, 20,000 tons of sand was brought from Cape Cod at God knows what kind of carbon cost to the environment to build a beach that was long gone before Ida ever came. And we have to stop creating this fantasy that all of the beach was there and then all of a sudden we had one storm and all the sand is gone. It started eroding the year that we put that beach in. And it'll happen again, and it'll happen again. And we will continue bringing in sand, $800,000, 20,000 tons, and it'll erode again.
Okay.
So as the beach encroaches landward, the shoreline encroaches landward, what is that going to do to your embankment at that point? I'll stop there.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Very much. And I gave you, and Nick too went over, so I gave everybody between 4.5 and 5 minutes, so I will stick with that. I just want to ask the experts here, is there anything quickly, or do you have any answers for some of the questions that Mr. Marr posed? Yes, no?
Yes, the beach, we're gonna put sand right now, the bed is out. That area will be graded, it will not be 30-degree, it will be maximum 1 to 15 slope. There will be a 50-foot buffer zone, and then it slopes down to 1 to 15.
To a beach
Yes,
with more sand?
yes.
You're going to build another beach there?
It's existing beach. We're
Why
gonna-
not? $800,000 for 4 years of beach is more than worth it.
Okay.
Money go.
All right. Thank you. Let's go on to the next. Robin Parsons. Thanks.
We were only told we'd have 3 minutes.
I know, and that's why the other
Can
two
I-
speakers, in all fairness to you, Robin, you can take the.
No, that's all
almost
right,
last-
because I trimmed it way
Well,
down
I
to 3
appreciate
minutes.
that.
But I would like to submit a written comment with questions, if that's okay.
Yeah,
because-
that's fine, and I will give it to Abdul. We can give it to Abdul.
Okay, who should I give it to?
For those of you who don't know, this is Chris Soto. He is the Director of Planning and Development.
Okay, my concern here, Robin Parsons, 129 Bellevue Avenue here in West Haven. My concern here is whether there has been an effort to align this project with the goals for the Sandy Point Beach Street area that are stated in our planning documents. This concern arises in view of what appears to me to be the clear absence of adequate public participation in the process. We have 3 minutes to ask questions on a plan that appears to have excluded both the informed and clearly stated long-term goals for this area and apparently any effective public input. This seems out of sync with the CT Deep's own policy for permit applications, which is to communicate with the local residents about the nature of their proposed activities, both before and after applying for permits. 3 minutes to ask questions after public input has been severely limited seems to violate the spirit, if not the letter, of the policy. I would like to know in what ways this plan was developed so as to reflect the following stated goals from our coastal resilience and harbor management plans. Number 1, maintaining or enhancing unobstructed pedestrian and visual access to the harbor management area from the bird sanctuary to Bradley Point. Number 2, discouraging development in coastal hazard areas where such development would require flood hazard protection. Number 3, protection, and enhancement of wetland areas. Further, sorry about that. I'm not used to wearing the mask. Further, I would like to know if this project was subjected to analysis via the Economic Analysis and Decision-Making Support Tool from the 2018 Circuit Design Technical Guide. I'm glad Circuit's here tonight. This tool was developed to calculate the net benefit of shoreline projects over time, including maintenance costs. I'd also like to know whether there was any coordination during this plan's development with the USDA working group that has been managing the floodplain buyout properties near Oldfield Creek. Finally, I'd like to know, and this is slightly to the side, but I would like to know on what basis road elevation beyond what was necessary to provide access to the water pollution control facility has received priority over the need to replace the facility's outfall pipe, something identified as a specific vulnerability in our 2017 Coastal Resilience Plan and scheduled for 2020 according to the plan's implementation matrix. Thank you very much.
All right. Ed Weiss.
Good evening. My name is Ed Wise. I live on Captain Thomas Boulevard. I just have a couple of questions. My initial overview of this thing was this was going to be a three-phase project. Is that correct?
Yes, it was supposed to be a three.
Okay.
Phase
Now,
1's done, and 2 and 3 are going to be together.
This is encompassing both 2 and 3.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I've been following this for several years. We've talked about it, we've studied it, we've engineered it, we've designed it, we've talked about it again, we've met and discussed it, and we keep going on, and it seems like we're going around in circles. Now, my next question is, what's the next step? What do we have to do to actually get something going? We've got the money that's been funded, we've got the engineering study, we've got all of the input from many different organizations, groups, and we just don't seem to be moving on it. That was my question. I know the administration's been actively involved, working, pushing this thing. They've been very patient, listening to the neighbors and the people in the surrounding area. But we have to do something. We can't stand here and talk and be here next year and talk and the following year and talk. We have to start doing something now. Whatever it is, we have to decide on it, and we have to move forward with it. There has to be a decision made, and we have to go with that decision. Everybody's going to be affected one way or another that lives in the area. Everybody who travels on the road's going to be affected or inconvenienced while it's under construction. But we have to do something. How soon can we expect to see some decisions made on this project?
Well, the purpose of this meeting is to air out, because I know when the last meeting that we had that I was at, and that's why I wanted to have, everyone wanted a night meeting, so I wanted to do a night meeting. I also wanted to bring it to City Hall because it was extremely difficult to conduct a meeting at the particular site with cars going by. It was very hot and everything else, so I felt it was better and more comfortable to.
I agree, but it just. We've talked, we've studied, engineered, designed, and everything. What's the next step?
The next step is, as long as everyone agrees, is the 11-foot, because it's.
Well, we're never going to get everyone to agree.
No, not every, but the
Believe me,
engineers.
if that ever happened in this town, I would fall over dead right here.
Anyway, the next step would be, if the 11-foot is where we go.
Right.
Then Abdul has to apply for a permit from DEEP. And that is a pretty long process. It's not something that you do.
Is it 6 months, a year, 2 years?
It's approximately 4 to 6 months. Abdul, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
So 4 to 6 months. We can't do anything
without
a permit. And I remember, I want to say that the first phase was closer to 6 months, wasn't it, for the permit? Because I knew it took a while for the WPCF.
It took longer than it's about almost a year for first phase, but now we have ironed out all the bugs, so we can get it faster.
Okay. Now, the funding that was approved for this, are we going to be able to hold on to that money for that period of time?
We are going to very much try. That funding was approved a while ago
I know,
now.
that's why I'm concerned.
I had asked for it to be as one of my top bond priorities that year, and the state delegation led by Dorinda Borer was able to secure the funding, which, by the way, she normally would have been here tonight, but she had a conflict and something else that she had already planned. So that's where we are, the funding, and I know that's a rare occurrence for West Haven. Usually we want to do something, we don't have the money, but in this particular case, we do have the funding of $5.2 million, which is what they're saying it would take.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Georgiana Jeff.
You know, I've sat here and listened to people all in favor of this wonderful project. I have a couple of questions. One, what infrastructures would be impacted with this elevation of the road? What buildings are along the shoreline that would be impacted by the raising of the road? I only see one economic building so far that would be possibly impacted by the raising of the elevation of the road, and that is that property that Nick mentioned, which is Chick's property. And I'm very concerned about, you know, flooding. If we're having flooding along that section, I live on Anderson Avenue. My name is Georgiana Jetty, 90 Anderson Avenue. I live on Anderson Avenue, and the elevation stops right at Morris Avenue. Okay, that's fine. I thought one of the reasons that we were raising the road was to alleviate somewhat flooding, and also have some economic development, which I support. But I will tell you that Morris Avenue has a incline going right down. All of the neighbors on the end of Thomas Street were completely flooded. There seems to be no concern about those people that are living right there that were flooded. As far as I can see, your project stops right at the top of Morris Avenue. Morris Avenue goes down. The people on Morris Avenue at the bottom get flooded. Okay, that's fine for them, I guess. And then it continues down, and the people on Park Street get flooded. My neighbor had 6 feet of water in his basement. I lost 2 cars in my brother's garage off of that. So my concern is, okay, that's fine that we're going to be worried about the shoreline and the flooding along the shoreline, but have you considered the fact that our area is really the flooded area? Other than the 3rd Avenue extension where the people did do the resiliency buyout, you know, our area is flooded. It doesn't seem like anyone is concerned, especially some of the people that spoke before and said, what a wonderful thing that we've had so many meetings. I haven't seen so many meetings. This is probably the 2nd or 3rd meeting, if that.
No, it's more than the 2nd or 3rd.
I don't.
Let me start the history for you. So we go all the way back to 2017 was the first
One meeting, that's right, I was there.
That was then, right, you were there, and there was honestly very little interest, because if you were there, you know, there was probably all of 10 people there, and then I know Mark Payne had attended, I believe, Sharon Mancini had attended, pretty sure Dave Colleen was there, you were there, but it wasn't as many people, not even near, of what this is. That was the first, I'm just saying, you asked, that was the first one. Then we've had, I didn't go to all of them because I wasn't able to, but I went to at least 2 to 3 of them on the beach, and then this one. So there's been quite a few meetings. I know Tom McCarthy was at one.
I think there was one meeting, if I'm not mistaken, there could have been one meeting at the beach, possibly 2, but that's it. And the thing is, this has really not been publicized for most of the people. You see a lot of people here tonight because word of mouth has gotten them here.
How is it not publicized? This has been on the website.
Well, what if you don't have...
Excuse me, can I just finish? You asked a question, I'm trying to answer it. I contacted Dave Colleen to make sure, because he told me, and everybody agreed, that he was the contact person. I contacted the contact person, I told him, and we even went back and forth with some emails and everything else. So again, my understanding was Dave Colleen was going to announce it or let the group or the email chain or whatever, not to everybody, but the people that he knew.
You're talking about this meeting?
Yes, this meeting. So Again, I don't know how much better we can publicize it than to put it on the website, try to get word of mouth in the neighborhood through a designated person. I mean, we can't send letters out to
No,
everybody,
I know
so we
that.
did
and
our best.
I appreciate that, Mayor, but also Dave was supposed to be our liaison with the committee, and he was, I think last February, might have been the last time he hasn't even been brought into any of the meetings, and he was supposed to represent us at these meetings, but was never contacted to any of the meetings.
Wait a minute, now, we haven't had any meetings here, to my knowledge, about it. The meetings that we've had have been public meetings, and what you had asked for, and a few other people, at the last meeting, because I was there, that you wanted a small group. Now, the small group, my understanding were for the, like, whether or not we're gonna do a crosswalk, maybe what color we're doing something, or different things like that. We cannot, just so that you understand, and from my point of view, we have to go with professional opinions. I'm not an engineer. I couldn't do, this is not my thing. I'm a CPA. I'm not an engineer. So we have to rely on the engineers and what they're telling us, and we have to do the best thing for the city of West Haven. And right now, they are saying the 11-foot similar to, not similar, equal to, let me use the right words, to WPCA. Now, I happen to think that project came out beautifully. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it is safer as far as the flooding. And it is definitely, I think, looks very appealing. It's very, very nice. And when you ride on the road, you can't even tell you're kind of going up or go up a little bit, but it doesn't seem like 11 feet.
Well, what I would like to, this is my last comment.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And I certainly appreciate, all of the people that are here this evening working on the project. I guess my concern is that what we would like to see is, we know where Sandy Point is located. I've been working there since 2013 to take a dilapidated area and make it into what it is today. We want to know if you are going to work in conjunction with the stakeholders of Sandy Point, because you said you're going to raise everything, which means all of the gardens and everything else that are there. So that's something that we're very concerned about in that neighborhood and also in the city and all the people that have been working there for years. And I guess, Audubon would have an interest in that as well. Connecticut Audubon, they have expressed an interest in working with the city to develop a plan for going forward with the bird sanctuary. Now, I have to say this one last thing. Most of us certainly are not against economic development. I want you to know that off the top, because I think that gets lost in the shuffle. We want the best for the neighborhood and the surrounding area for the city of West Haven. And I appreciate you listening and hearing my concerns. And maybe you can hear the concern about Morris Avenue in the future and the flooding that occurs down there, because I don't like to see people going out of their houses in boats. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do want to ask the question, because Sandy Point, and first off, the other thing I want to add, and I do appreciate all the work that has been down there. I know Georgie and Jet, but it wasn't only her. There's a whole group. I mean, the place is absolutely beautiful. We received an award earlier this year, so I can't thank the volunteers enough for all they have done. They have definitely changed the look for the better of that parcel. That being said, what would happen? Like, we raised the road, what's gonna happen? I know the parking lot, you had said, would go up, but what about like all of the plants and all of the things that they're talking about? Do they get raised up? Because again, this is not my expertise, so I'm going to the engineers again.
We'll redo all those.
Pardon me?
We'll redo all of those planters. They're gonna be affected, but we'll restore it.
Okay, so.
They would be, all the planters, planting areas, whatever, they'll all be restored to equal or better than they are now.
Okay, so they will be in a better condition and look, and so is everything getting raised then there with the parking lot to make sure there's no
Yes.
steps or anything at all like that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I realize other people are getting answers to their questions, and I asked a series of questions and I got no answers at all. So will there be an opportunity to get those answers?
Well, how many, like, in other words, what questions did you ask, Robin, if you want to step back up?
Okay, I wanted to know in what way the plan was developed so as to reflect the stated goals of our coastal resilience plan and harbor management plan. I wanted to know if the project was
Okay,
subjected
so
to?
why don't you step up here and we can go through this and see if we can answer them here or find out, because if you give me 3 or 4 questions,
Okay.
again, because I'm not answering these questions, because as I said,
Okay.
not.
I was probably too nervous, I didn't do a good job. But it's important to me to understand the process that was gone through here. And I want to know how and whether, when you began to do this planning, you planned in order to reflect the stated goals of the Coastal Resilience Plan and the Harbor Management Plan. And then I listed 3 of those goals that seem to be contrary to what this project will do. The 3 goals from the Coastal Resilience Plan and the Harbor Management Plan are maintaining or enhancing unobstructed pedestrian and visual access to the HMA, that's the Harbor Management Area, from the bird sanctuary to Sandy Point, Bradley Point, rather, that's that whole distance. Number 2, discouraging development in coastal hazard areas where such development would require flood hazard protection. Number 3, protection and enhancement of wetland areas. I want to know whether when this project was being designed and moved forward, how it attempted to incorporate these goals. That was question 1.
Okay, then let's, because I
Okay.
can't, in other words, everyone
Gotcha.
else did not speak. We've only been here, I can't give you 25 minutes or 30 minutes.
No, but I would like the answers,
Well,
because I
let
had
me-
4 questions.
Okay, Robin, we're going to do this my way. We're doing a question. You haven't even let me ask or to inquire. So I'm not going to, continue to do this. All right. The question is, and I guess I have a question of everyone. So WPCA was raised, as we all know.
Yes.
Were there any situations, any problems does this pertain?
No, that's in the plans. Access to the water pollution control facility is a clearly identified necessity,
So.
but not the raising of the rest of the street.
I honestly, I'm only going to give you a few more minutes after this because you keep interrupting me and I can't get an answer and it's adding time. Abdul, I don't,
We have hazard mitigation plan. This is one of the top priority to raise the road for the water pollution control plan. It's consistent with all the goals that you have stated. It meets all those goals.
so you have your answer.
I didn't understand it, but let's move on. The second one was whether the project was subjected to analysis via the Economic Analysis and Decision-Making Support Tool. CIRCA and our own Eileen Krugel was a participant in this process. CIRCA put together a design and technical guide for shoreline projects that has a tool in it that Robert Mendelsohn, an economist at Yale's Forestry School, developed for calculating the net benefit. This is a financial area, Mayor, so it's of concern to you. The net benefit of shoreline projects over time, including maintenance. I'd like to know whether there was any attempt to analyze the project with that tool. I'd also like to know whether there was any attempt to coordinate the plan with the USDA.
Okay, are you
people.
going on to another question again?
Yes.
Okay, so.
My fault.
Again, I ask, let's try to do
Okay.
one question
All right,
at a
let's do
time.
that one then.
All right, and when you talk about tools, are we talking about Sustainable Connecticut? or
No,
are
no,
we-
no, this
or-
is a CIRCA
Okay.
design guide.
CIRCA.
This is a CIRCA design and technical guide. Correct
Okay.
me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can speak a little bit about the
Thank you.
guide if you'd like.
I just want to know if they used it
Okay,
at all.
well, let him speak about it now, please.
I'm guessing no, but, I think that you could actually do some analysis to look, using that methodology that Dr. Mendelsohn has developed at Yale. I will say that particular tool looks at the value of property. And so it's a tool that allows you to make decisions based on property value as the guiding data for whether a project should be done or not.
Right.
And I think it's one tool that could be used to sort of assess, like, essentially what it does is it would add up all the value of the property that is, theoretically protected from a specific project, and then balance that with the cost of the project.
Right.
Right, but there's other values that you would want to think about
Right.
in terms of this area: recreation, public access, all of those things that might not fit into that particular tool as well.
Right.
So that's all I can say. I don't know whether they've used it or not, but we'd be happy to support the community if the community wants to look at it through that lens.
And how long would this take to do to?
That's something I would have to get back to you.
Okay.
But I do know that Robert Mendelsohn, who's a professor at Yale, he's he's super excited about his tool. So he probably could find a graduate. He could probably find a graduate student who could give you that piece of information as one piece of information to look at. But I would caveat that it's mainly about property value protection. So it's places where property value is currently expensive are going to show up as, hey, that's a good project because the property that's protected is expensive now.
Right.
So it's not about like properties that the value could be enhanced or protected. It's not going to tell you anything about that.
So I know you said you couldn't give a specific time, but in other words, is this something we could do while we're waiting for the permit so that we find, in other words, it's going to take 4 to 6 months pretty much, and hopefully not longer until the 4 to 6 months. So if we applied for the permit and then we were waiting for this to come back, do you think that's a reasonable time to get this done? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to commit circa resources to do it, but I would say that if you could find somebody to do it and reach out to Robert Mendelsohn, I'm sure that you could get something done in 4 to 6 months.
Thank you very much.
I think where I would just point.
Sure.
We are not required to do benefit cost analysis for this project. This project was approved strictly for access to the plant.
But
We are
that
not
was,
required to do any
we
benefit
have
cost analysis
access
for
to
this
the
project.
plant. Right now.
I'm sorry?
We have access to the plant
No,
right
we don't
now.
have. If there is a storm like Sandy or higher, we won't have access.
Well, that isn't my understanding. My understanding was that phase 1 was access
This
to the water
project is part of
treatment.
the hazard mitigation plan, have been approved by the city council and the regional FEMA.
Okay, the last one is whether there was any coordination when this plan was moved forward with the USDA working group, the people who are doing the rehabilitation, whatever you want to call it, of the properties in the federal buyout area around Oldfield Creek. Did you work with them to make sure that their concerns were reflected in your plans?
We did not coordinate, but I did talk to them on this issue. They don't have any issue with it. So I met with them about a week ago.
Okay. Doug has some stuff to add, Doug Coulter again, so if you'd like to come up, Doug, and add what you can.
The NRCS Third Avenue Extension buyout project was designed to correct the wrong of filling in a marsh and building houses at a low level. It wasn't economically feasible to raise those houses and raise the road. And because all the soil underneath is grossly contaminated from centuries ago. So the benefit of stormwater storage there is a side benefit to the rescue of those homes from stranded. And they will repeat loss, repair the lost structures. So most of the stormwater storage advantage is from rainstorms and inland flow, not coastal. If you can think about the vast quantity of water in the Atlantic Ocean and Long Island Sound, little Oldfield Creek isn't going to hold much to mitigate a flood. So what that mitigates in flood is the 9 inches of rain that dumps onto the ground.
Right.
And by expanding the storage capacity of that for fresh water, it also holds stormwater in the estuary before it flows out to the sound and reduces its contamination. So that's the purpose of that. And Abdul
understand
had talked
that.
to the NRCS people, and I did too about this. Their initial concern was that this might block rainstorms
Flowing out.
from flowing out.
Exactly, that would be the
But
concern.
they were satisfied after speaking to Abdul that was not going to be the case. And to your point, we also further correct the outflow of Oldfield Creek when we do the outflow pipe, and that'll help that flow as well.
Is there
But
going
this
to be a
road
tide
is-
gate there?
Well, that's a possibility, but this road is not affecting the ability of that stream to come and go any differently.
I thought I remembered the engineer from Race saying that it actually would. At the last public meeting at the beach, I believe that she expanded the number of hours that it would take to drain if the road were raised to elevation 11. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I recall.
That is correct. In the 100-year storm event, when the road at elevation 11 could get overtopped by waves, that water will drain to the Oldfield Creek, and it will take that volume, overall volume, will take an additional
30. I think it was 30 hours.
30 hours to drain through the existing tide gate infrastructure. So that is something that we did look at, but again, there are potential ways to mitigate that could be explored.
All right, I'm going to go on to the next speaker now, and that is Chris Marrone.
Chris had to step up, so
Oh, okay, so you're speaking in his place? Okay.
My name's Stefano Coletti, and I'm one of the owners at Chick's Restaurant. And based off of the panel here, and on behalf of Chick's, I'd also like to state that we're looking or hoping that the road will go to 11 feet or greater. Thank you.
Okay. Speaker number 7, Dave Colleen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
After getting some of the presentation, I think my comments have probably been modified a little bit. There's some new information I'd like to respond to, and I'll try to blend it in as I go along. My name is Dave Colleen. I've been a resident of 2nd Avenue for almost 14 years, and it's the neighborhood that is the most directly impacted by this project. I hold a degree in landscape architecture, have more than 40 years of experience in the field of planning and development, am familiar with evaluating the impacts of projects on coastal resources, and I understand the principles of building in the floodplain. Almost a year ago, in December, I was asked to be part of a team to work with the city and the engineering staff on issues that we had raised last December about the design of this project. No secret, that summary was dated December 9. Those concerns are still the same today. Many of our questions have not been answered. So I am sorry that people feel we're holding the project up, but the city has taken a long time to respond to many of these questions that we've had. The major concerns that we raised, first, you'll be introducing a structure that could be an imposing man-made structure into an award-winning natural area. That has to do with the design of it. Brian, I appreciate very much the new illustrations that you provided tonight. We had not seen those before, but one observation I would make is that every one of the images that you provided were taken basically from the advantage of either being up on the road elevation itself or set back from the road elevation. Where our concern lies is in some portions of the road, this road will be elevated to a height of 6 to 6.5 feet. And as pointed out by Bob Mera, its footprint will be quite expansive, over 60 feet in width. It's a solid structure. We'd be putting a solid structure into the floodplain here, and we believe that will have impacts on flooding. When you look at new road, new house design, houses are designed specifically to be elevated above the floodplain, and they're designed generally on stilts so that you allow free water passage. Here we've got a 3/4 of a mile structure that will be solid. So our question is, how does that impact? We do think that the area that you mentioned, Brian, north of Monahan, is an area of concern. We believe that the area by Morse, as Georgiana mentioned, is an area of concern. When this large structure is hit by the water, the only choice it has is to go around and into the back. And as Azure pointed out, it could be 30 hours before it then drains out through the tide gate. We'd like to have insurance that the drainage in that area is carefully calculated. When we first entered this project and when we first mentioned our concerns last December, we were dealing with a road that was envisioned and designed under today's FEMA requirements and today's building standards. Until June, we were led to believe that there might be a willingness to bring the road down to elevation 9 or 9.5 feet. I'd like to point out, because I've heard twice today again, that there's access to the treatment plant is one of the main initiatives being supported by this project. We were told that during Sandy, the city had to put staff onto a boat and bring them out to the treatment plant. We understand that was a concern, but I want you to also understand, you're talking about a road that's elevated to elevation 11 feet, but do you know that the parking lot is only elevation 9? That road, that parking lot is going to be flooded. You're still going to have to find an alternative way of bringing people to the treatment plant. So our concern is introducing this large structure, and think about what happens. Once you put a road up much higher than me, 6 or 6.5 feet, you have embankments on both sides, and as Bob Mara pointed out, over 30%, very steep, very hard to go up. This is going to be an obstacle between the community and its waterfront. The sides of those slopes have to be encountered when you go up and over it and down the other side. I look at the municipal parking lot next to Chick's, and I think to myself, those people are going to have to climb up a driveway that's about 5 feet in height and then cross over the road and go down to the beach. And when I look at the plans, I don't see much beach there, and it's not clear how the shorefront in front of Chick's is being stabilized. That really concerns me. So it's about perspective and how it fits in. It wasn't until July that all of a sudden we had a new approach to this. We were being asked not only to look at today's FEMA standards, but we were also asked to look at sea level rise 20 years from now. So all we're asking is for the city to weigh and understand the changes it's making to its waterfront, the impact it's making. This is going to be like an elevated road or an elevated entrance ramp onto a highway, an elevated highway, that's what I meant. It's going to have the steep embankments, it's going to have guardrails to keep cars from going off the edge. It's going to feel like a highway right near your waterfront, and it's going to interfere with our ability to use the waterfront. We're just asking you to weigh that. If the parking lot is elevation 9 and you want to get to the treatment plant, make the road elevation 9 or 9.5 so you can get to the treatment plant. Otherwise, find another way of getting there. It's a large structure, and it's concerning. Maintenance of the structure is the other thing.
Let me just see, before you move on, Dave, because I'm going to do something similar. Can anyone answer the concerns that he has? Because I don't want to get into question 3, the same thing, that's why I tried to do Robin too. Let's try to, if we can get some answers, let's get some answers.
I'm not sure what parking lot you're referring to. What parking lot has to do with the water pollution?
The parking lot that serves the water pollution plant. I assume that when individuals go into the water pollution plant, they park their cars.
You have to park car inside the water pollution plant.
Inside where?
They park inside the water pollution property. They don't.
Correct. But on that parking lot, on the water pollution property, according to the GIS city has, it's elevation 9 feet.
We are working all night to protect that one. We are going to build a wall around the plant so it doesn't get flooded at all.
Okay. So it's more constructive. See, this is the kind of dialogue we really needed to have. There are pieces that come out and get added over time, and it's hard to keep up with it. This isn't the only area of the city that gets flooded. I guess part of our concern is that $5+ million is quite a bit of money. We look at just down the street at Stowe's is only elevation 7 to 8 feet. Ocean View Condos is elevation 7 to 8 feet. The Debonair is elevation 10 feet. Peck Avenue Condos, elevation 9 feet. The Savin Rock condos are elevation 10 feet. Those are all other sections of that one street of Beach Street. West Walk condos is 8 to 9 feet. There are other parts of the city. Bayview Plaza and Rotary are 6 to 8 feet and 9 feet in elevation. There are problems there as well. This doesn't do anything for them, and it seems to do a fairly major change to this one area, as if this is the only place in the city that floods.
From Morris Avenue to Washington Avenue, there is a dune that protects that area.
Right.
Okay, we're going to extend that dune all the way to Bradley Point. That's another project. That's not part of this PST. So this whole area will be protected.
And that would be a great treatment here as well. I think the idea of living shoreline is something we wish had been considered, and because there really haven't been a lot of public meetings with discussion of alternatives and so forth, there's been really no opportunity to figure out what other options there are other than raising the road so high. We just want it to be in scale. Our suggestion is that you consider putting it near 11 feet near Chicks, if they'd like it that level, and perhaps bring it down to elevation 9 or 9.5 feet around First Avenue and and the bird sanctuary. We think it will fit in with the character there better.
I'm having a hard time understanding when where you are talking about Second Avenue, Third Avenue. If it's going to be level with Second Avenue, what's the difference? You're not saving any embankment.
I'm sorry?
Second Avenue, Beach Street and Second Avenue would be at the same elevation,
As what?
11. Beach Street would be
I'm talking about First Avenue
level.
and Beach, right?
Dave, you come out of your house, drive
Yes.
across the water on Second.
Yeah.
They're gonna bring beach up to the same elevation as it right in front of your house. So you
No, I know
don't
that.
really
And they're going to elevate the properties on Second Avenue and haven't talked to any of the homeowners that are there. That's part of what they're looking for, is some dialogue of how that's going to affect the front of their homes. People with the sanctuary are wondering if they can be involved. This is a pretty major event to fill the parking lot of the sanctuary and raise it to the elevation of the road. Seems like a lot of work to me, but at any rate, those are my comments.
Does anyone else want to make any comments on what he brought up, or?
I think all of his comments, his concern will be addressed, or being addressed actually. Once we do the final plan, all those concerns will be addressed.
And you'll address them, will there be a maintenance plan as well? Because on Phase 1, which was constructed in December, there was only one time that Public Works went out, August 13, and they went out with weed whackers and they whacked the weeds down along there. And I agree with you totally, Mayor Rossi. When you're driving on it, it's a wonderful ride. And it will be for the rest of it as well. People will get on this and they'll think this is like a coastal roller coaster. Nice, I'm up above, I can see the marsh, I can see water. Where you encounter the issue and why those residents of Second Avenue are the most concerned is when you engage the side of it. The maintenance of it is going to be incredibly important. We don't want the sides of these roads to be overgrown with tree of heaven and Japanese knotweed and grass growing up. Is that really how we want our waterfront to look? That was why we've introduced the concept of lowering the road, because the lower the road is, the less all of these impacts are. So, and I'll submit
Oh, good.
a written comment
Chris
as
will
well.
take that. Thank you, Dave. Next is Theresa Mcelwain. I hope I said your name right.
So my name is Theresa Mcelwain, I'm at 136 Richmond.
Okay.
And the second gentleman answered my broader questions, and Dave brought up a lot of my other questions. I have a few very specific questions. To clarify, just so I'm clear, the road as you're proposing at 11 feet is at the Sandy Point Bird Sanctuary is actually 3 feet above where it is now? Is that correct?
Yeah, approximately, yeah.
Okay. A 3 feet rise from where the current road is.
I don't know the number off.
Roughly?
Yeah, you're in the ballpark, yes.
Okay. What is your anticipated lifespan of the road under normal maintenance?
I can't speak for the city. I don't know how often they maintain their roads.
Under normal maintenance, assuming normal expected maintenance.
25 years?
Okay, so given a 25-year lifespan on a road, what are the assumptions in line? Are the assumptions in line with the current insurance company assumptions and FEMA assumptions about sea level rise and climate change in this area?
Well, I understand that FEMA regulations have changed this year, and they're under, and I don't, that's not my area of expertise. But under the old regulations, this road will have no effect of FEMA rates.
No effect on?
But that may change based on how FEMA's looking at insurance rates.
Okay, I'm trying to see what alignment there is between the planning of this road, the height of the raising, and the projections for what we will be encountering across the lifespan of the road, given that it's a $5 million project. So that's one. For the embankments, how wide from the road to the base of the embankment on both sides, each side?
It varies everywhere. I mean, it varies everywhere. Like in the area of Second Avenue, like in the parking lot for the bird sanctuary in particular, there is no embankment. We are going to raise the parking lot to 3 feet and taper it down to meet existing at the end of where it ends now. So you won't even see, visually it's going to look like nothing. It's going to look level.
So there won't be
There will
an
not be.
embankment from the parking lot down into the marshland?
No.
Okay. Okay. In a Category 3 or 4 hurricane, what assumptions have been employed regarding stability of the road and the embankments, erosion, etc.?
You got to remember, our design is not done yet. And I don't want to say we designed to a Category 3 hurricane because we've never had a Category 3 hurricane. So we follow DEP's best management practices for the maintaining the embankments.
And then lastly, is it fair or accurate to assume that the two primary reasons for this road are access to the water treatment plant and economic development of the Chicks property?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
It's not. It's economic development of the waterfront, not for Chicks
Okay, so
primarily.
are the two primary reasons access to the water plant and economic development of that stretch?
Economic development is a second. Well, the mayor could maybe
I'm not
answer.
saying in either order.
No, the mayor could maybe answer this better, but it's my understanding. This project started before my time, but it's my understanding the primary purpose was access to the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. Economic development, I believe, is a secondary.
Right. And
Mayor, would you care?
He's absolutely correct. In other words, the main reason that happened was because of the storm that did surround, and they had to have boats to go out WPCA. So that's the first and foremost reason of any of it, and that's why that's done first, to be honest with you. The rest of the stretch, though, is waterfront property, as everyone knows, and it's, you know, it can be very beautiful. Unfortunately, buildings have been left there for very long periods of time and have deteriorated, and it looks terrible right now. And now that we have interest, there are developers, more than one, that are interested in different parcels. And again, I don't know what the intent yet is on what's going to be built down there, and they will have to work their way through the different boards and commissions for the necessary approvals, but it will look very nice, and nicer than it does right now. I mean, Sandy Point is beautiful. When you look at the other side of the road with decaying chicks and grass growing and the skate park half flooded, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's nothing beautiful about that anymore. There just isn't.
I just wanted to get clarification for everyone about what the primary assumptions and reasons are. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Michelle, I don't know if it's Coletti or I apologize if I spelled the name incorrect, or said the name incorrect.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. My name is Michelle Coletti, and I live at 46 2nd Avenue. My partner and I purchased a blighted home just about a year ago. We invested, we fully renovated the house, and we love it here. So we moved from Stamford, Connecticut, and we felt very lucky to find West Haven. So once we moved in, the first phase of the road elevation was embarked upon, and I started doing my own research on the project, which we knew nothing about when we purchased the home. So we scoured the internet to try to find more information, but couldn't really find a lot. It was only through our neighbor, Dave Colleen's kind of tireless efforts to obtain information that we were able to learn what we know about this project today, or I should say today before tonight's meeting. I personally submitted an FOI request to the city 2 months ago. Unfortunately, I have yet to receive a response. Some of the questions were in line with maybe 1 or 2 of the answers that we did receive tonight, so I appreciate everyone getting together to relay some accurate information about the project. So professionally, I've served as the Director of Development for the 3rd largest real estate development company in the country. I've worked with municipalities in major cities throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast region, including Washington, D.C., New York, and Stamford. While I am not an engineer, I have led teams of engineers, architects, and designers and understand what it takes to accomplish complex projects. The challenge here seems to be that while there may have been good intentions, it has unfortunately, with this project, it has unfortunately been stalled. As a result, I think a lot of the folks here feel that perhaps it was not properly vetted. I think folks feel that they don't have a full understanding. I know you were recently engaged from Circa, and there was one third-party engineering firm engaged as well. And it's kind of at the last minute, and this puts the folks that have questions and concerns that were unanswered sort of not at odds, because we all want the same thing, right? We all want chicks to be successful. There's a great group of guys that want to open something wonderful there, and we're fully in support of that. But unfortunately, we haven't really had time to digest a lot of the facts that were presented tonight. And that includes a lot of questions. So first, the design of the actual project. Were there alternate considerations made for the design or other alternate solutions in terms of the road elevation versus potentially some natural environmental solutions?
I will, again, I'll take one question at a time. I'm going to have Abdul, if he can answer, and the reason I say that is because this started, as I said, before I became mayor, that the first meeting happened. And so I don't want to speak out of turn either. I don't know what the startings of the project were. But again, I remember that we did have a meeting, and in fact, it was here many years ago now. And like I said, there was a small group of people. So Abdul, if you can shed any light on this, I would appreciate it.
I mean, as I mentioned, this project was initiated strictly for access to the water pushing pond. It's an existing road, we just want to make sure that it's accessible.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what other alternative we could consider. I mean, there are not too many options.
Sure, but as other folks have stated, we already have at this moment access to the water treatment plant. So I think you're also trying to, you're shaking your head. Did you want to say something, Doug? Okay. So I think everyone really is just trying to understand the purpose of phase 2 and phase 3, which has, my short understanding of it, has switched from the water treatment plant, and perhaps that was a funding issue. So perhaps you couldn't get the funding for phase 2, phase 3, switched over to economic development, which is great. Yay, economic development. But really, is it an evacuation route? Because it's not the suggested evacuation route for the coastline, is a point that David made. So I think, again, there's a lot of confusion. It's been a long time, a lot of confusion, a lot of miscommunication. So I think in an effort to understand, I see where you're coming from, but I'm really talking about phase 2 and phase 3.
But phase 2 and phase 3, Abdul, isn't there some component or fear of flooding there as well? And I know that years ago, I used to bring my children to across the street from Chicks, and it was much different look than after storm, the way it looks now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the original idea, because we had protected from Morris Point to Washington Avenue with the dune, and not only that, but the road is actually elevation over 12, most of this place, except near Washington Avenue, which is the lower part. But this part from Morris Point to Monahan Place was very low, so that's the reason we want to elevate it.
Okay. So I was at the last meeting at the sanctuary that was outside. It was a little tough to hear, but I believe at that meeting the question was asked, and it was actually you that stated that the road would not actually provide flood protection, was not meant to provide flood protection.
That was not the primary purpose of this road.
Right, okay. So another question, have you all looked at best practices? I know, John, you're here tonight, but have you all looked at best practices from other coastal cities on the East Coast in terms of a road raise project and other factors that are involved? Can any of you identify any similar project, or is this kind of completely breaking the mold with anything that's been done on the East Coast?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
Have you looked at any other road raise scenarios that have been done successfully in terms of best practices on the East Coast? As John, you know, it's an issue, you know, for everyone on the coast. So where has this been done before? I'm not sure. Again, I'm not clear where the brainchild came from, but
I think there have been many places that the road have been raised. There is a one road project going on right now in Fairfield.
Okay. That actually was shot down. That's not happening.
No, I went there. The road has been raised.
Well, okay, so one case that I was able to find is actually Miami Beach recently, started in 2014, and I don't want to go over time, but just quickly, they started in 2014, and it's taken them to date. They're slowly starting to roll out the program, and news outlets call it astonishing that they're actually parts that they're doing now are raising the road 2 feet from where it exists. Just 2, not 6, just 2. And it's taken them from 2014 to today to get where they are with it. One critical component as a best practice of that project is taking into account storm rainfall, heavy rainfall, right? So when you're at any coastline, they're installing up to 50 pumps on the other side of any road raise that's along the coastline to account for a collection of water on the other side and to pump it back out into the water. Are there any pumps or pumping stations as it relates to the project that you've thought through?
Not as part of this project, that may be in the future.
Okay.
Depending on how.
Is that because it was cost prohibitive, or is it because it's not within the grant amount that you're provided, or do you, as an expert, believe that that would be the best practice?
At this point, I don't think we need a pump station, but at some future date, it may be necessary.
Okay. Have you all looked at the ramifications of phase one and talked through with residents nearby phase one to see how that's actually impacted the residents on the other side of the roadways?
I don't think the phase one has impacted the residents.
Okay, that may be the case, but anecdotally, there are several residents there, unfortunately, that said they've been living there since 2017, and the last year they've had extreme increases in the amount of backflow and flooding in their streets. So again, we have legitimate concerns, I think, about the design, and while none of us are experts, we just want to make sure it's not a case of, we have not held this up at all, just for the record. Anyone with a concern or a question has not held it up. And I think our main concern is that we stand here today at the last moment, and we want to make sure it was well thought out, well vetted. This is an experiment, right? It took Miami this long to get where they are with this experiment. And we want to make sure that all these questions have been asked and answered. So we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Richard Hebert.
Hi, my name's Rich Hebert. I live at 166 Bloom Street, right across from the pump station that exists on there. There's a lot of questions here that we've been going over and over, and we don't seem to get answers. One of the questions I got for you, Nancy, is this being recorded?
Right there, the video.
Okay, so the other meetings we had, there was no recordings on those?
No one down there. That's why I wanted to bring it up here. This was my
I'm glad
idea.
you're doing that, and hopefully that we can get some public information, of what people
I
have
believe it goes
brought
on
up.
YouTube, but not until tomorrow.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and I want to welcome the new business people that are coming to our town. I think we all need some help paying our taxes here. Now, one of the things that was brought up here is we get a little bit of a map here. We don't have an overall in-scale presentation of what this is going to do. How does this relate to what's there today, and what's the differences? None of that has ever been shown. What's going to happen at the end of 2nd Avenue? I've asked questions before about traffic issues. People come down that road pretty fast. And there's no statement by anybody here of what they're going to do for traffic. How are you going to slow things down? One of the other things that came up here was about exit routes for when it does flood. There's no signage out there. How do you get out of that area? If you're in front of chicks, how do you get out of there? And where you're supposed to go if there's a flood? We should have signs up there, just show you which direction to go so you don't go into a dead end where you're trapped. You see this thing here? Well, 2 houses down from me, and the last big storm, whatever it was, the water comes up this high, 2 houses down from the road level. Okay? Now, you're designing a big fishbowl here. You can understand that. So, Oldfield Creek gets fed from downtown on the other side of Campbell Avenue. It's all down here, it goes out to the ocean. You got tidal gates there. The tidal gates can't handle the capacity of water that's coming down. It's been shown time and time again. When you walk walk out of City Hall here, Campbell Avenue floods. That water squirting up from the manholes, that's flood conditions. There's not enough capacity there. So my concern, and a lot of these people's concern is, what's happening with all this water over here? We gotta put a road in. Oh, so we're gonna build a barrier behind which, when it floods, it's gonna contain more water than the existing exhaust areas can handle. What do we do for that? It doesn't seem like it's being addressed, because we're gonna spend millions and millions of dollars doing this project, and to me, the whole idea is to make things better, not worse. The tidal gate. Now, you have engineers here that are supposed to be able to do things like figure out capacities and flows and, what's going on here. Well, when that whole area flooded, the tidal gates get shut, so the water has nowhere place to go. It just comes back into the bowl. And we're going to raise the road, and that's going to make it a little bit worse. I want to know, is there any studies there concerning how to evacuate mass volumes of water? And thanks for your time.
Thank you. Last one I have on this sheet, I hope I'm saying this one right. Leela?
Leela, yes.
I got it right. Your turn.
Let me say this, because most of the questions that I had to raise have been raised by Michelle, because that's one of the things that I wanted to know. Was there any collaboration, was there any research done on what happens in other towns? Because we have the longest
Public beach.
And we are actually doing something that may end up devaluing our most valuable asset. So we have to be very careful that what we do really does enhance the town and protects us all, because we all want to be protected. I live on 2nd Avenue, and if anybody would be impacted more, it's who lives on that block. We would all not have an escape road, probably, if things get bad. So I would like for you guys to really go more into it and not rush this, and make the best decision for the city.
Well, just so you understand, this isn't a rush unless it's the slowest rush I've ever seen, because once again, it began in the beginning of...
Just pointed out that since 2012 or 2014, Mine and Beach have been doing their projects, and they have still...
Okay, we're not, okay, everybody, the thing is what I'm trying to say, it was in, I believe, 17 that I was here at the beginning of 17. So we're talking 4 years now, over 4 years, well over 4 years. So to me, that's not a rush. We have had certain meetings, and I have engineers here. So see, my thing is, I believe in going with the experts and the experts' decisions. And what I mean by that is I'm a CPA, so I know how to, do a lot of things financially. So I am an expert, if you will, financially. I'm not an expert in everything or engineering. And at some point in time, we have to rely on the science that these folks have been taught and what the right thing is to do. And that's why I've invited them all here again, so that we can go over this. So it's important.
There were other experts here also, other engineers and other builders.
Not just that.
Well, I'm looking for an engineer, not a builder.
Not just that, but there were still a lot of questions that the experts could not answer. In relation to the project that they weren't prepared for, and they didn't think about.
What questions, I think we did pretty good with answering the questions, because the panel answered most of the questions that...
The water level.
Okay, one at a time. Okay.
I can't quite recall, but I realized that there were questions that they said, we're going to have to go back and look at, and so on. So there were questions that were
and then they will go back if that, there might have been a few questions, but they did answer quite a few questions. And my position is this, again, they are gonna look, before Abdul can apply for the permit, he has to have all the answers to be able to put it together, right, Abdul? I'm not speaking out of school here. He has to deal with Deep. Deep will give feedback as well, I'm sure. It's a give and take type of thing. They're not just gonna give a permit if they're afraid that the road is gonna, turn into the new lake of West Haven. So, again, it's a give and take thing. The problem is, each time we put it on hold and put it on hold and put it on hold and put it on hold, that area deteriorates and deteriorates and deteriorates. The nicest part of that area is your street, because the streets over there are nice, and all your houses are beautiful, because I do ride, we go up and down the beach a lot, my husband and I. But Sandy Point is definitely the shining star of that whole area right now. We have buildings that are rotting before us, as I said before. If we have to wait another year or two, and that, we've already done 4 years, so that's why I wanted to do this meeting. I've done my best to give everybody a lot more than 3 minutes, right? I started with 3, but I wanted to let people, try to get their questions answered. I invited professionals here. I am also, again, I'm available with email. You can send me questions at email at any time. I mean, I'm not answering the engineering questions, but I can forward them to the engineers to get them answered. I want to take a look at Fairfield, because I heard the same thing. The other place that I'm interested in, Abdul, do you know anything about Cape Cod? Because I heard that this goes on a lot in Cape Cod communities, raising roads. Now, again, I'm not...
I have to check. I think many places have been raised.
Right, so this isn't the only place. We don't want your properties to be ruined. We don't want your quality of life to be ruined. We also don't want nothing down there other than to just leave it the way it is for a continued period. So that's why, again, I'm not the engineer. I couldn't tell you what way to raise it or anything at all like that.
Just a moment, Mayor. That stretch of road that is not being proposed to be raised. As far as I can recall, there's only one building within that stretch of road, and that is Chicks. Because the Captain's Galley has been decimated, so there's nothing else but the marsh. So we're talking about a decision being made. And if you are saying that you're thinking about the development and how the place looks, and that the fact that down there looks rotten and dirty and all that, there's only one building there that you should consider.
But first off, the one building has a lot of problems, and there's another building that is right by the project, which is the Debonair Hotel. So that's another building that clearly needs a lot of help. It's right where the road raising is supposed to come down. It's supposed to end right before the Debonair, correct? No.
It's not within the...
Okay. Everybody talking at one time doesn't help.
You were chastised before for being off topic. That's off topic.
What's off topic?
The Debonair. That's not in the consideration of what we're talking about.
A part of that stretch of road that's being...
And I asked, I didn't get a chance to ask because everybody jumped in, Abdul, that the road will come down right before the Debonair, correct?
No, it ends at the condominiums.
Condominiums there. So the thing is I will tell you this, you may think the Debonair doesn't have a play, but it does have a play, because there was no interest. The Debonair only sold once there was interest again for raising Beach Street. And that's clear-cut fact, because when we started having these meetings, that's when interest in the Debonair came back. No one had talked about the Debonair. Again, it's a building that has sat, unfortunately, for years, and it's an eyesore, quite frankly. So we are trying to clean up the city. We are trying to do our best. We're trying to please as many people, because I know we're not going to please everyone, but we're trying to please as many people as possible, keep people's properties safe, and continue to invest in our city. And our shoreline is one of our greatest assets here. We do have the longest stretch of public beach. And I mean, we should utilize it. And that's why there's interest now in that. So again, I mean, Abdul is going to do his due diligence. He has great partners here that have been able to help. And I do want to continue, because there's still, I know I put another paper out there, so I don't know if there's any, thanks. If anybody else signed up, because I asked people to sign up to. Yes, that's a sign-up sheet. That's sign-up sheet number 2. This is sign-up sheet number 1. I need, yeah.
Chris, can you grab the sheet?
Thanks. Okay, everybody who signed up, I'm gonna need your address, so we'll start with that. And I'm sorry, were you done yet? You can come up here too. You don't have to stand in the seat. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Come on, I should have brought a gavel.
Sorry.
This young lady's trying to speak.
Yes, I just wanted to say that every time we have a meeting, we have had the same experts. And if you had cancer, you would probably go to 3, 4, 5 doctors to get different opinions, because you want to be sure that if the doctor says I have to remove my breast, it is. So we're only trying to get diverse opinions, and we would like to see some other experts.
Okay, we have 4 experts here right now. I mean, so each one, in other words, they don't all work in conjunction together. They're separate entities, if you will. So I have 4 experts here that understand engineering and what is going on down there and have evaluated it. So there are 4 experts here. So it's not one.
I've seen them before. I'm not saying it's one. It's just that I've seen them the same experts before.
Okay. So that's that one now. Pat Bollettieri. Pat, I just need your address.
215 West Walk.
215.
Thank you. 215. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Mayor. I live at West Walk, and we're at the extreme west end of Beach Street, the boardwalk. And my question is, I know that the project stops at Morse Park, but my concern or my question has to do with rain, the heavy rainfall. Where is the rain actually going to go? Behind the wall or the levee, as Bob called it? Where is the water going to drain?
The rainwater will continue to drain. It goes to the marsh, and it will continue. Everything funnels down to the marsh, and it will continue to do that in this scenario.
Okay, so Chick's property, for example, the water that it's going to go down this ramp, isn't it going to flow
To the flow in the same
inland?
direction it currently does.
Because now it can actually disperse and part of it can go into the sound. But now that you have the barrier, it's only going to flow inland, isn't it?
Well, it would only flow, it would flow to the sound when the tide recedes now, but it still takes time for the tide to recede. And what's captured on the other side of the road will continue to go to the marsh as it does now.
Okay, and our property at West Walk, the project stops at Morse Park, so is there a downhill slope? And is the water going to drain towards Stowe's and the condos that are there? I think, Abdul, you said that the elevation is 12 feet, so we're going uphill?
This project has no bearing on West Walk. There's no connection between this project and the West Walk.
So the water that is going to have a different path now to drain is not going to come in our direction? Is that what you're saying?
This is separate, completely separate. West Walk, there are outfall under the fishing piers. That's where the water goes out, the rainwater. there's one on Washington Avenue, and there's one, I believe, on the Oak Street.
Because during Ida, the Washington Avenue was a river flowing down toward the sound. So I guess I'm having a hard time visualizing where all this water is going to come together and then drain. That's my question. How is it going to drain for anyone along that stretch?
Yeah, the Washington Avenue and Beach Street intersection is a low area. That's where the water comes up when there is a heavy rain or storm. But it does go out, there is an outfall there.
Okay, so there won't be any adverse effect to West Walk, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it. This project, Beach Street, really has no bearing on West Walk at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Christopher Marrone. I just need your address for the record.
Sure. 183 Beach Street?
183 Beach.
Or 21 Weathers Road.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Marrone. I'm with the CHIPS team over here. And I would just like to say that, first, I appreciate Chris, yourself, Abdul, and Doug for all the information so far. And we've had some great dialogue with some of the neighbors, too. We met with Dave and Michelle, and we really appreciate that meeting, and I think we had a great dialogue. And at first, it was very disappointing. We closed on this, and then we heard 2 days later that there was a meeting at the bird sanctuary, and we said, oh man, last thing we want was conflicting interests with any neighbors, right? But after that meeting, and then especially with meeting with Dave and Michelle, it felt like our interests really aren't that far apart, and we really want what's best for Beach Street, so we appreciate that. From an economic development standpoint, FEMA sets, and I spoke with Doug in great lengths about this, the elevation of 11, right? So engineers and everybody else and all these experts, that doesn't mean that FEMA will ever change their mind of something lower than elevation 11. And for us, with economic development, that is what brought our interest here, right? Because we could talk about a building getting wrecked or getting flooded, but loss of use is the next, it's so detrimental to a business. And even though there might be businesses that aren't directly right here in front of it, it's a loss of use to it. We talk to businesses right now that are on the Post Road in Orange. And if you're familiar with that, their business is being decimated right now because traffic is very hard to get to that. And when Sandy happened, this road and asphalt was totally destroyed. So at least 6 months, I'm not sure what the downtime was, but that was, for years this property was up in the air, and we said, this is a very desirable piece, but how could you open a business where you could be down for 6 months to a year? You can't operate like that, and there's no insurance that will ever cover that. So there's some things that are, we could talk about FEMA 2.0 and what are the mitigating factors that are going to happen. We all don't know, to be honest with you. It could help, right? Raising the road as far as getting a discount for every West Haven city resident, it's a possibility, right? There's things that have to be done to get to there. But we do know this, is that FEMA sets that for us. We have to abide by everything when it comes to business and permits at that elevation 11. But for us, that main concern is loss of use, right? It's loss of use. So that's why it's so important to us, is everything revolves around that elevation 11. And I appreciate you letting me speak today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jane Whalen. And Jane, when you I just need your address.
100 Haynes Drive.
Thank you.
My question is pretty quick. I assume that you did an environmental impact assessment, and I'm wondering if you considered And I didn't think of this until I heard Georgiana Jetty, Rich Hebert, Pat Bollettieri talk about the effect it might have on their streets. When you did an environmental impact assessment, did you include the streets that are a little bit down the road from Beach Street? You know, the side streets, and how the raising Beach Street would affect them?
Abdul, did you?
I don't think it will have any impact on the side street raising of this road.
Did you do an environmental impact assessment? And did that include the side streets that are along the beach?
I mean, the raising of the road has no impact on the side streets. When you say effect, what kind of effect are you looking for?
Did you do an environmental impact assessment? And did it?
We did environmental review. It was decided that environmental impact statement is not required for this project.
It's not?
No.
Really?
This project was funded by DECD, and we completed the environmental review process, and they looked at it, and they got an exemption that it's not required to have environmental impacts on this project.
Wow. I guess that answers that.
And, Doug, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, because I know before, I don't know if questions got answered in between, but if there's anything else.
There were just a couple of things that came up. So along the coast, we have a blue line on the map. It's called the Limwalk line, and that's the limit of wave action. So 80% of all your flood insurance claims and your hazard damage in America are wave related. So right now, the Limwalk line is right on the beach side of that road. So any raising of that road is going to help keep that Limwalk line there when sea level rise happens. And so I hope John will jump in. Sea level rise is not happening 20 years from now. It's going to do this over the next 20 years and end up there. Well, we could end up with a storm like we had in 1918 that would bring 5 feet of water across that current road. And the higher it is, the better barrier it will be to that wave action. So while the road is not designed to change the floodplains at all for mapping purposes, it certainly will have an effect to protect the existing structures that are on the other side of it. As to wave overtopping the road and having water trapped on the other side, well, it's no different than it is today. If the road lower, the wave will come over, it'll go into the marsh, and it will take time to drain. So there's no change to the draining
I
of the
wasn't
marsh.
even talking about waves overtopping the barrier, just normal rainfall that we've been getting lately.
Yes, so our normal rainfall is now not so normal.
Yeah.
Right? So we're seeing events that we haven't seen in our lifetime. And we're looking at a bowl that exists now, and it drains through these current paths, and that doesn't change with this road going up. All those paths out remain the same.
I don't know, I just keep thinking that with the barrier up here, that the water's going to have nowhere to go other than the side streets.
That was my very first impression too. And Abdul will tell you, I went in and I said, what? You're going to do what? Release the road? And he explained it. He showed me the topographic map where all the fresh water goes. So yes, this entire city has a stormwater issue because it was designed in the 40s and 50s when rainfall wasn't so dramatic as it is today. We have 12-inch pipes, or we need 36-inch pipes. This is a problem throughout the city. But the freshwater drainage system from stormwater that goes through this isn't changing, and the impact to it is being changed by climate change, not this road. What this road will do is to help prevent, so the coastal flooding is the main reason that it floods there. So any kind of barrier that keeps the waves back is going to help reduce flooding from coastal issues on the other side.
If I could add just one statistic to Doug's point, is that the road at elevation 11 has a 20 times less likelihood of being overtopped and flooded, you know, with the behind it. So, you know, so you think, you know, versus now. So, you know, there's, while, again, I had alluded to an increased retention time within the marsh, the likelihood of that water getting there in the first place is significantly less than today.
Thank
you.
Joe, can you just speak to the non-linear portion of sea level rise on that?
I mean, I think you covered it, you know, I mean, so sea level rise is not a linear thing, you know, there's fluctuations that have to do with the, you know, patterns in the Atlantic Basin, and so, you know, I think your point was that sea level rise is happening now, and the risk associated with increased flooding as a result is something that we're starting to see, which I think is a fair point. You know, I think in general what we see on the Connecticut coast, and I think it's reflected here in West Haven, is that the places that flood now are likely to flood more often, and the flooding is likely to be deeper. And you know, it's a tough. There are tough trade-offs that every town is trying to make with sort of like balancing these competing goals. So yeah, I mean that's all I would say about that. And I would say that I would, you know, the issues related with stormwater flooding is obviously still a concern, and that's something we've looked at a little bit at Circa, but you know, that was not included in the simulations that I showed earlier. So I do think it would be worthwhile for the city to focus on the stormwater flooding and how it relates to Oldfield Creek and that whole area. And there might be strategies that would be useful to take in tandem. You know, a green infrastructure strategy to sort of reduce the impervious surface of that whole area that drains into Oldfield Creek in combination, right? So that, you know, you're not just doing one thing, but, you know, this, I think the point that Abdul's been making is that this is one project, and it's not gonna address all the problems, but I think it would be worth a comprehensive approach for the city to kind of look at the stormwater flooding and how to mitigate that in concert with the coastal flooding, because they're both going to be problems going forward. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the last piece, just to address Robin on the outfall pipe. Part of the outfall pipe project, which we're struggling to find funding for, but we are attempting, is to lower the flow of Oldfield Creek. So Sandy was the last kick in our butt. Dumped a bunch of sand at the mouth of the river. So getting rid of that sand and changing, it actually changed the direction. It used to flow out to the sound and flows into the harbor. We want to put it back to its original outflow and lower it, and that'll help that basin to drain faster. So that is a plan. We just need a year of 29 million to make it happen.
But it
Somebody
was-
wants to write a check.
It was on the implementation matrix for speedy detention.
Yes. As speedy as someone will write the check. So we're on our second round now of trying to get those funds. We have a better chance coming up in the next year than we've ever had before. So we're very optimistic that we can make that happen.
Dave has a question, and then we'll call it a night. Go ahead,
I
Dave.
just have a question of Azure.
Sure.
Azure, you provided some very extensive flood modeling during our meeting in July. Prior to that, there had been very little communication between our group and the city, but we've been asking questions about the flood modeling. And there was one email that you wrote on March 31 in which you basically said to Abdul and to Brian that the height of the road would not impact the flood protection value, more or less.
FEMA flood, yeah, I said it will not change the flood.
FEMA flood maps. Simply raising the road does not automatically, while it reduces your flood risk, your flood map does not change unless the city or FEMA makes a change.
Right.
And
I
that's
thought you
a
made
problem.
both those points in the same email, and it sounded like it would have no flood protection value, no matter what the height of the road was.
Oh, no, certainly, we've done all the.
No, but that was based, it seemed, on sea level rise projection.
No, we did, at our first analysis was without sea level rise, and indicating the benefits of raising the road, on still water inundation of the road, as well as wave impacts to infrastructure behind the road, first without sea level rise, and then after we did that analysis, people came back and said, well, what about sea level rise? And so we added it after that fact. And so I think the handout that I gave over the summer has both of those scenarios, both with and without sea level rise. And then the first, with respect to the FEMA mapping, again, just because the city does this project and there is an effect of reduced flood hazards to the area, the flood insurance premiums necessarily don't change until the maps change, and there's a process for changing the maps, whether the city engages in a letter of map revision process or FEMA redoes the mapping on their own, taking into consideration the higher elevation of the road. But just at the end of the day, with the road being elevated does not simply reduce your flood insurance premiums. There's an additional process that needs to happen to do that.
But is it true that this project in itself would not necessarily provide the kind of flood protection that would change the map?
No, it could.
Okay.
It could, to certain parcels.
Because my understanding is different in talking to a representative, but that's okay, for another day.
All right, I want to thank everyone for coming. I think that this was very productive. I hope everyone else did too. I mean, maybe not every question was answered, but I think this worked out better than having it as beautiful as Sandy Point is. It's noisy, it was hot, and this, I think, is more comfortable for everyone. I'd like to thank all of our engineers and experts, and we also, I forgot to add Doug as an expert floodplain manager too, right? I didn't do that before, so we have 5 experts here. And again, I'll be talking to Abdul in the next few days, and we'll see where we're going to go with this. But it is important that we start moving this along, and that's why I thought it was important to get everybody here in a comfortable situation and not, and I did my best not to rush anybody. I mean, I couldn't let anybody talk for an hour or two, but I went well beyond the 3 minutes, and everybody, I think, was very respectful of that. And I thank you all for your opinions and your questions. This is the way we can get things done and exchange information. So thank you all. Everyone have a good evening.